I'm the most transparent president probably in the history of this country. I think we've been the most transparent administration in the history of our country. I have been the most transparent president and administration in the history of our country by far.
The president and this entire White House are committed to ensuring the American people continue to receive this same level of historic transparency, access, and visibility. In fact, we want to double down and give even greater access to the American people.
Do you? Do you really? Because some recent reporting would prove otherwise. So look, Trump's White House, which has repeatedly called itself the most transparent administration of all time, actually recently removed the only public database showing how federal dollars are spent, despite laws requiring them to disclose that information. So that means a key tool for transparency and oversight into how the executive branch is spending our money, or how they spend appropriated funds, is now gone. So John, I don't know, maybe I forgot what words mean, but to me that seems to indicate that they're less transparent, not more transparent. Am I mistaken?
Well, so far there are 3 people who we have to evaluate and whether they understand how words mean. So there's you. There's Carolyn Leavitt, whose literal job is to be a liar for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump, whose brain is tapioca pudding. So I think that if any of the 3 knows what transparency means at this point, I'm probably gonna lean towards you. I honestly, like, the details are interesting, we should go into them. I don't have a ton specifically to say about this one, except to say that it's your daily reminder that just 2 months in, this is the most lawless, openly corrupt administration of our lifetime. And it's only gonna get worse from here in a million different ways. Some of them are gonna hit you in the face, and some of them, like this, most people wouldn't have even known about if you weren't covering it.
And it's interesting because, I would just venture to say that knowing how taxpayer money is being spent is an important part of a transparent administration. Transparency to me isn't just about allowing Elon Musk and Navarro, what was his first name again? David Navarro? Peter, there we go.
Peter Navarro, I think, is a musician.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mix them up sometimes, but not as people, but the names. But yeah, Peter Navarro and Elon Musk openly feuding isn't the kind of transparency I care about. The kind of transparency I care about is knowing where my money is going, where our money is going. We as taxpayers, I feel, should be entitled to that transparency. Now, look, this all has to do with what are called apportionments, okay, which are essentially how the president, acting through the Office of Management and Budget, implements Congress's spending packages. So the apportionment process was created to ensure that agencies basically spend within the limits of the law and don't prematurely blow through the funds. And again, those funds come from us, the American taxpayer. So until July 2022, the Office of Management and Budget's apportionment process was largely done out of the public's eye and even Congress's view, which was a problem, which is why laws were passed to change that. So legislation was passed requiring OMB, Office of Management and Budget, to post its apportionments on a public website. And in the fiscal year 2023 omnibus package enacted in late 2022, lawmakers inserted language making clear their intent was for the OMB to continue to operate and maintain the automated system required under the previous spending law in that fiscal year and each fiscal year thereafter. So this is the critical part, so stay with me. The law was in part a response to actions taken during the first Trump administration, whereby then Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought directed agencies to withhold the obligation of funds to Ukraine using apportionment footnotes. Okay, so it was really the first term under Donald Trump that spurred this legislation, which led to more transparency. But look, take Trump out of it. Like, I actually think it's bad that it took that long for the government to be transparent with the American people in regard to how the executive branch, how executive branch agencies were using our money. That's crazy. So now Russ Vought is back serving as the White House Budget Office Director, and he's doing everything he can to obscure his office's dealings once again. So at the end of March, the OMB took down the website where all of this information is supposed to be listed. If you go to that website now, here's what you're going to find. It just says page not found. A group called Open OMB tracks apportionments, apportionments, and makes oversight easier for watchdogs, the press, and the public. But now their website also has a banner that reads the following: the OMB website that provides the underlying data used by Open OMB is offline. There will be no new apportionments posted on the website until the site is back online. So I'm going to get into why the administration is doing this in just a moment. But even though you said you don't have much to say about this story, John, I'm curious what you think so far.
Yeah, again, it's not the sort of service or site or whatever that like I would be directly going to, but I'm sure that I and our viewers benefit from the sort of people who do deep dives into it, or from the investigations that Congress will from time to time do using that data to understand what's actually going on. And the lack of transparency is a major issue. Yet another online service going down in a time when supposedly we have like the world's best tech support people working directly in the government. Now nothing works online. It just the approach, the ideology behind it is pathetic.
Yeah, and look, I'm gonna put this in the context of like what's been happening in California. So right now, the federal government has launched an investigation into the tens of billions of dollars that are unaccounted for in the state of California that were specifically appropriated or allocated to help the homeless. Homelessness has only gotten worse in the state. That money is missing. Multiple audits have not been able to account for where the funds have gone. So that has led to a federal investigation. So when living in California and experiencing that firsthand has been enraging, has been so infuriating. And I think that this level of transparency where you see how the money is used, where the money is going exactly, what contracts are being written, what kind of grants are being given out, that information is super important. Because yeah, you're right, John, most people, most Americans are not gonna go to the website, they're not gonna check, they're not gonna care. But for journalists, for people who do care, for people who want accountability from the government, that type of transparency is super important. So doing away with this website, doing away with these disclosures, I think is wrong. And it flies in the face of the law, which we're gonna get to. But why is the White House doing this? Well, Roll Call, a publication, claims that sources familiar with the decision said that it was made because preliminary information was being disclosed on the site. I don't believe them on that at all. So don't post, you guys are the government. Don't post preliminary data, post the final information in regard to where taxpayer money is being spent. And that making apportionments, I keep wanting to say appropriation, sorry, but that making apportionments public could include sensitive data that might pose a risk to national security. And that's the thing I love. That's the go-to excuse by the Trump administration on everything they do. Oh, you're deporting people with no due process? It's due to national security. Okay, like everything is national security. You're implementing tariffs without really thinking about the consequences to the American people. We're doing it for national security. Everything is done out of concern for national security, John. I would venture to say national security shouldn't be used as a blanket excuse for bad behavior. And it appears in regard to this particular story, that's what the Trump administration is doing. Using it as an excuse to be not more transparent, but less transparent with the American people in regard to how their resources are being spent by the federal government.
Yeah.
So that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and look, the only way that it's gonna turn around, the only way that does any of this does is if people stay on it. But the issue is that we're hit by so many things every day. Like, what are the chances that this is the big thing? I mean, look, there could be a legal challenge, perhaps having to do with transparency and that sort of thing. Judges have sometimes saved access to this sort of thing out of the Trump administration, but that's basically the only hope that I would have for it.
Yeah, look, government watchdogs and Democrats aren't buying it. I'm not surprised that Democrats aren't buying it. Of course, they're going to come out against anything the Trump administration is doing, but I'm not buying it, right? Like, I think I've been pretty fair when, the Trump administration does things. In this case, they're doing the wrong thing and they're going against a federal law that was passed in 2022. It's a law requiring public disclosure. So a House Democratic aide disputed the contention that published apportionments could expose sensitive internal agency deliberations. Also, if any apportionment data is sensitive enough to be classified, that information is not disclosed on the public site, the aide said, calling the action deeply suspicious. Yeah, it's deeply suspicious because it's hiding what the federal government is doing with our money. And that should be considered unacceptable by every American citizen. You're paying taxes, you deserve to know how that money is being used.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.